Hi guys, Matt Wheeler and Seth Kenny here from Qualified Meetings. As a follow-up to our webinar yesterday with David Delaney, there was a question asked about persona and vertical-based messaging. And Seth and I were chatting this morning, and as part of our new wave in socializing a lot of what we're doing here at QM, we thought it would make sense to address that comment or question first. It's a very interesting question. We look at it on a kind of a micro level most of the time, talking about, does it make sense to have to customize every single outbound message for the persona and the vertical? I go back to my days at Forescout Technology where we were, selling a network access control solution, and part of that outreach to the persona was actually different within each vertical. So if we were speaking to a CISO, about different security issues, those could change when we reached out to a persona that was in an oil and gas industry versus retail, healthcare, government, whatever. So we spent a lot of time understanding the difference in reaching out to those personas within each vertical. Now I would say, Seth, for the most part, in a lot of our accounts, a lot of times you can figure out the persona piece of it, and that applies to every single vertical. And then from a customization side in the messaging, what we would do then is really when you go into the email messaging or the scripting, you could talk about in general how you work with organizations in oil and gas or healthcare, and how you work with some companies like XYZ that relate to those individuals so that they can have an understanding that you have, the education or background on what is important to them within their organization. Now that's not always, it's not always important to worry about the vertical if your service or software really applies across the spectrum to every single vertical in the same way. You solve the same problem. But I guess, Seth, where do we get started on this?
Yeah, so I think it's always gonna start with testing your own environment. I mean, there's always gonna be benchmarks where you're looking at industry, persona, you're looking at whatever relative pain it is that your solution or service is solving. Those are all going to be optional split test campaigns that you can run. Dial your own environment in and really find out which one of those is going to perform the best. So that would be my advice: is start with that. At least get some general messaging down for each of those solutions and scenarios, and then roll from there. Try to build your own use cases. Take what you've got today, and then create some messaging around that for industry specific, persona specific, and then even in some cases tool specific. Just to pick on a specific client, but I think their solution is a bit unique in the sense that it's not really a solve all problem for all people type of thing, but I think you could certainly tag that to it. And then when you're looking at the way that their solution applies to personas, it's very, very similar across all industries. The industries that they can help and help see results and an ROI from their purchase, again, very similar across all industries. So for them, it's going to be more tool specific. If they're using SAP, Salesforce, one of those big monster systems that's utilized by so much of the Fortune 500, that's really going to be a campaign in and of itself. And something like that is industry agnostic. It's really, for the most part, persona agnostic, although you can make some personalizations between the persona and the way that it attaches to that specific solution's value proposition. It really is, for the most part, agnostic across both. So just an example of a scenario where it's not always about the industry, it's not always about the persona, but knowing your own environment can really help point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I think the key to all this is when you really start to do, your due diligence on who those personas are, that you can get down to the 1-inch level and relate to that individual. Meaning, if you call them, email them, whatever it may be, you're taking away from their ability to do their job and take that time away from their day. So I think that just trying to relate to them on a problem-solving basis. In some cases, I've sold products before that were nice to have solutions. So going in and understanding even where do I rank stack within the organization as far as the priorities go, so then I can at least relate to that person on timing, right? Hey, I know you have these other challenges within the organization. This is important to you guys. I would also assume, what other projects are you working on today, and where do you think the time would be to come up and, that we could spend time talking about these areas of your business. So when you really understand, I guess, the holistic view of what that individual is responsible for, what their career path looks like and for themselves and what problems they're trying to solve for the organization, then you really start to relate to that persona in a much different level. I know a lot of times when we get on the phones, we take the human element out to where we're just seeing names on a list and we're not really relating to what that individual, does. We all have, jobs to do within our organization, whether you're in sales or whether you're an engineer or, a CISO, it doesn't matter. We all have individual jobs and career paths. So trying to really understand what that is very helpful. And then I think the other part of it is trying to get away from being that, that bullet sales guy where you're calling in and you're like, hey, I got an oversized trunk and we got spinning wheels on the tires and 21-inch rims and I got the big sunroof and the big motor. Every vendor on the planet is calling in with that. And I think that going in with a solution sale around the Persona and Vertical is an absolute necessary piece of the business today. I know, Seth, that's an area you spend a lot of time on with our sales reps.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I mean, feature benefit dumping, that's not helping anybody. I mean, anybody out there can go and say, hey, we do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and that's great, but then you're making it all about yourself and not about them. It's really got to be about the specific persona, industry, or like we said earlier, a specific tool use case or something like this. You've got to have something specific that really helps you answer the question, what's in it for me from the prospect's point of view, or that old WIFM that you've seen tossed around. So I think that's really the end game, is to try to figure out what that is for you. Maybe it's a couple of verticals and industries. Maybe it's a couple of different scenarios that you want to try to play out. As an SDR, that's what you got to dial in. So figure out what that looks like for you. Do some testing, split test everything. And then even when you feel like you've got it dialed in, continue to challenge yourself. Run those new campaigns on the back end. Try to come up with new, fresh ideas around what industries, verticals, or tool-based specific messaging that you want to go out to market with. Test it and see how it works for you.
Yeah, I agree. So, at the end of the day, Qualified Meetings is a company that's really focused on the success of the SDR. So that comes from, in our engagements with the companies we work with, we go in and really help them dial these programs in, make sure we have systems, process, visibility, reporting, all that stuff built. We want to go in and make sure that the sales development programs are a success, number one. I've just been part of too many companies that killed the sales development program 2 years before I got there. There wasn't a real understanding of what they were trying to accomplish at the time, what the results were, what the ROI was. So at the end of the day, we're SDR first. We really want to spend a lot of our time helping SDRs become more successful, helping VPs of sales and marketing understand what it takes to build successful programs, how to measure people properly, and how to set realistic expectations. And then on the executive level side, or the C-level side with the CEOs and CFOs, really start to help them understand why it's so important to invest in you guys and make you successful in these programs. It's all about getting you a career path, number one, that's successful, seeing these programs not get shut off, and then ultimately have success in the market to help individuals, companies grow. So one of the things that Seth and I are going to do is we're going to begin a series of these Qualified Meetings tips and more one-on-one, kick in the can, whatever you're going to call it, and just discussing certain topics over time. So if you guys have any interest, about discussing a very specific topic, feel free to send us a message or let us know. And really, at the end of the day, it's just all about the SDRs and making you guys successful. So good luck, and look forward to our next session.
Yeah, send us your questions, guys. We're looking forward to it.